Hi there, Mayor. So we have received these photos that you guys sent over, I think from your team, from Mark. And so what we're looking at here is the measurements markup. And so I'm going to walk you through this now. The first thing you're probably seeing here is like, this is not the bike. Just hang in there with me. This is the photo you provided. We want as good of a top view as we possibly can, and so sometimes I pull them offline, the best that I can, so that we really can see the top view. Okay, now it's not exactly the same, but bear with me. I'm going to explain all of it and walk you through it. I'm going to make this as easy as as I possibly can, but I think in this country we definitely expect a lot from our public officials. But no, we're going to walk you through it, and if anything's unclear, if any uncertainty, any clarifications, you just let me know, and I'll get you answers. But again, I'm zooming this photo in quite a bit, so that's why it looks a little bit grainy. But you're going to be there taking these measurements off of or ideally you can staff this out. That would be my preference, right? But with the actual model. And so all of it's going to be a lot clearer there. We've got some really simple ground rules for how to do this. And so, whether the individual is an expert with the tape measure or not, we're gonna get through it. Now, keep in mind, this is the second of the 3 steps of the design. So we have photos. Now we're going to go through the measurements. In the 3rd step, we'll take your measurements, we will put them into a very simple build diagram of the cockpit, and we'll ask you to double check those original measurements. And the purpose there, as you can imagine, is measure twice, cut once. So this isn't the one and only time that you will look at these measurements. Don't stress, don't worry. The second time around, it always just kind of clicks. And so that's why we do it twice, right? It's the best practice. So just get through this, some quality garage time, or I guess dealership time with the bikes, and then that 3rd step. I mean, it's always easier. So that's the other thing. So this is A, and we also will have B with a separate video. A is going to refer to the the Nightster, and B will be for the Scout. Okay. And they're pretty similar layouts, and that's gonna be real nice when I next talk about the mounting plan. So that's what we'll do in this video. 3 simple things we'll go through. We'll talk about the mounting plan for the Nightster. We'll talk about simple ground rules to keep these measurements easy, and then we'll go through the measurements together one by one. Okay. So the mounting plan here, we have 2 bolts on the side. Now you can see I've done some photoshopping because this particular Nightster model is not the exact same, but believe it or not, in the whole of the World Wide Web, we don't seem to have access to the exact same model. But the principles are all there. We have 2 bolts along the sides of the rear wheel hub, and we are absent a passenger seat. This is going to actually work out really nice for you. A lot of riders, and those of us riders who aren't necessarily as big and tall, tend to prefer this setup. So what we do is we have a full bottom cockpit. Now, often when there is a passenger seat, we will do a partial bottom cockpit, and the cockpit will carry the load to the rear while the passenger seat is carrying the head, torso, front paws of the dog. That can be, 40 to 60% of the weight. In this case, though, we're essentially taking the cockpit with a full bottom and resting it on the wheel hub. Now, you can put a sheet of rubber, some type of gasket material to protect the paint. There's no, that's real straightforward. It's like $6 off of Amazon, and no worries about the paint. But what that does, if you kind of remember from school days, like, the seesaw, right? And we've got the cockpit resting on top of the wheel hub. And so that's really transferring all that load of Noyles. I hope I'm pronouncing that. It's a great name. Noyles load, 85 pounds, directly to the motorcycle the way it would from a passenger seat. So it's a really great setup. And the other nice thing is it drops the cockpit load lower, right? Because instead of being at the top of a passenger seat, now we're at the top of the wheel hub. So really, really great setup. Real nice for more natural performance and some aggressive twisties riding, that type of deal. So that's the idea here. We'll have brackets, flat bar brackets that bolt into these bolts along the side and just come straight up and lock to the cockpit. So the brackets carry the load, the wheel hub carries the load. It's really just beautifully distributed. And then we also put a bolt hole back here for this bolt that is in the center that would secure the passenger seat if you were using it, right? Okay, so excellent. Again, it's not exactly the same on this top view, but hopefully you get the idea of what we're looking at here off the live model. Good. So there's the plan. Now let's talk ground rules. Real simple. We've got some 3 of them up here. Measure through the window. That's number 1. Imagine you have a window over the motorcycle in this top view photo. Front back measurements, side to side measurements. There's no angles, and you're not allowed to go up or down with the tape measure. Okay, can't do it. So anything that's lower, you got to bring it up to the level of our window. And the green line here is our window on top of the wheel hub. So what riders will do is like use a ruler or something, and they'll just kind of bring it to the level, and then they can take the measurements like 2-dimensional. I think you get the idea. Now, number 2, use string, okay? Really helps. Best practice, makes it simple, makes it accurate. Very different example in the bike here, but it really works the same. You're gonna take a piece of string, run it along the center of the motorcycle, okay? Tape it off at both ends, just like this rider did, and then line up your measurement features with that string. Okay, it really is going to help this work nicely. So for cruisers where it's just a little bit different, what a lot of riders will end up doing is taking a couple of rulers or those, you know, those like stirrers for the paint. If you're painting your house, like they're like balsa wood and they're just flat, and you can just take like some electric tape or something or some duct tape, I guess actually masking tape, and you would tape it on here. And that essentially brings everything up to this window level, and then you can connect it with string. So it's a little bit of like, you know, sort of a little bit of school homework kind of a thing. But you get the idea. We want to keep this simple. We don't want to bend the measuring tape, and we need to know the side-to-side measurements. Okay. So that's the idea. Now, in the third rule here, you're going to find the starting point, and then you'll measure forward, backward along that center line string. That's what it's there for, right? So I've spread out arrows simply so you can see them better, but we're always going to measure along the center line. All right, now let's get into it. We have, how many measurements? We have 9 measurements here. So, okay. Starting point is going to be essentially at the back of the seat, okay? Let's say right here, okay? It is frankly arbitrary, and you'll see in the third step that how we deal with it, okay? The point is, of this point, that you're going to be consistent. So find that point and be consistent. That's your starting point, okay? Right here. You're going to measure forward, backward from that starting point, okay? So just, I know it's kind of a struggle that this is not the same, but having a good top view really makes the difference. So from our starting point, you're going to have a helper. You will be seated in your normal riding position, and your helper is going to start at the starting point. They're going to run the tape measure right into your back. Okay, you are seated in a normal, comfortable riding position. That's number 1. Now, number 2, same starting point. This time we're going to go straight back, and we have the bolt back here on the wheel hub, somewhere in this area, hard to see. You're going to find that bolt. I think it's somewhere right around here, okay? And you're just going to measure straight back to it, just like you see here, right to the center of the bolt. Always center of the bolts, okay? So that's 1, that's 2. Now we're going to deal with these lateral brackets to these lateral bolts. So the front one, okay, again, you can see it better here. We're dealing with this front bolt. So you're just going to be on the outside of the fender, right where that bolt is, measure to the same point on the other side. No bending the tape measure, right? This is a purely horizontal measurement, side to side. So that is number 3. That is actually measurement string number 3, okay? Exactly what this rider did. So you have measurement string number 3. So from the starting point, measurement number 4 goes straight back to measurement string number 3. That's the idea of these strings, okay? We segment the measurements. 3 and 4. 5 and 6, exact same idea. rear bolts center to center, just on the outside of the fender. And then from the starting point, number 6, we'll go straight back to measurement string number 5. Okay, so 3 and 4, 5 and 6, same idea. And then believe it or not, when you do the Scout next, you're going to be doing exactly the same thing. And so you will have had so much practice with this that you are, expert. So 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we just round things out with the vertical measurements. Okay, we'll start with the rear because that's where we just were. Center of the bolt hole, straight up. Front bolt, center of the bolt hole, straight up. And in this one, we're at this rear bolt that's somewhere in this area. And it's usually on the kind of downward curve at the rear. And so that little distance straight up. All 3 of these, 7, 8, 9, will go to the level of our window, right? Which at this point is essentially a plywood board, a foam board, something that's going to just balance nice and level there. No droopy corners on top of the wheel hub. Okay, so we've got our 9 measurements. Okay, take your time. Generally, we say this is quality, crack open a beer. This is quality time with the bike. And any questions, anything's unclear, you just let me know. We'll get you answers. We'll set up a video call, whatever we need to do. Okay, now we're going to move into part B, the Scout. So that will be a separate video.